folks, I'm Tom Vassell. Welcome to Board Game Breakfast. We are glad to have you with us today. Now today, this is being released on November 7th, 2016, and that's an important date to keep in mind. Not that date per se, but November 15th, which is a week and 1 day from today, the Dice Tower Convention registration is going to open, and you can find it at dicetowercon.com. So go there on that day, go there ahead of time, put a reminder in your calendars. It definitely sold out last year. We have more space this year, but it still might sell out, so I would not delay. I'm warning you now. It's a fantastic convention. You'll have a lot of fun coming to it. Also, once again, I'd like to thank everybody who's helping out with the Jack Vassell Memorial Fund auction. And there's still time to go to that and to bid on items there or drop items off. And then next week, when that registration goes live, we here at the Dice Tower are going to be at BGG.con, Board Game Geeks Convention. And so I'll be there, Sam will be there, Z, Eric, Jason, and many different people. Some of them from Board Game Breakfast itself are going to be there. We're going to have a booth there with some promos and or a chance to come play games. If you want to play a game with us, that is easily one of the best conventions for that to happen. If you just want to talk and spend some time, easily the best convention for that. So hunt us down there. Come say hi. Come ask to play a game. We're not promising to play a game with everyone. We just physically can't do that. But I don't really have a huge agenda there except for playing games and eating, I guess. So if you're at Board Game Geek Con, we hope to see you there. And there's no Dice Tower show. Last year we did a live Board Game Breakfast from the convention. This time we just want to take it and relax and spend some time. Now because of this, the Board Game Breakfast will be delayed a week after that, but that's still in the future yet. Finally, before we get to the news, I did want to mention that in the Dice Tower audio show, which is being released tomorrow, definitely listen to that because there's a contest there where you can win a $500 gift certificate to Cool Stuff. You want to know how to do that? Well, listen to that episode. That's dropping tomorrow. So what's in the news? First of all, we have the Castles of Callendale has been announced. This is a new game from Renegade, and Renegade's just knocking them out of the park these days with their new stuff. And this is a tile-laying game where the castles somehow got mixed up in magic, whatever the theme is, but you're tile-laying and building a castle, like Carcassonne, but a castle. That looks pretty neat. Toy Vault has announced an Outlander Destiny dice game. This is not to be confused with Star Wars Destiny. It's a different game. It's a dice game where you're trying to bring the two main characters together. Oh, romance, how sweet is that? Game of Thrones LCG, Fantasy Flight has announced that they're going to start making draft packs for that. So if you want to do a draft for that game and play it in that sort of setting, that's one of the harder things that LCGs have over, collectible card games have a chance to have drafts. Well, now you can do so with the Game of Thrones LCG. Tabletop Season 4 started last week. Will Wheaton, I think they did Lanterns was the first episode. Another episode, I believe, is dropping this week. After that, if you want to watch them, you will either have to pay for a new service they have called Alpha, or they're going to release them on YouTube for free at the beginning of 2017. Gloomhaven, which is a huge legendary style game. It looks like it's a role-playing game in the box. I saw the box. The box is massive. Pick one of these boxes behind me, multiply it times 6, and then it's chock full of stuff. This is coming out early 2017. I'm actually very intrigued to see what's inside there. And then Peterson Games, they're the ones who made Cthulhu Wars and Theomachy, have announced a couple games that are coming in November. Orcs Must Die. This is based on the video game of the same name. And Dysonstein, where you're going to be creating monsters that will then fight each other. All right, well, that's normal news. Time for Kickstarter news.
Happy breakfast, everybody. There are some fun projects on Kickstarter right now, so let's take a look. From the makers of Chaosmos, Guildmasters has players competing to build the most prestigious guild to earn the king's favor at the end of the game. You can gather resources, craft equipment, and send your heroes out on quests. You'll be crafting items with resources, which earns you gold and treasure. Gold can be used to hire special workers who provide different abilities, or you can expand your guild with new rooms that will open up new actions and abilities. Guildmasters is a lightweight Euro-style game with a fun theme, nice art, and it's really the kind of game that players can sink into the theme and tell stories about all their guild adventurers. You can get a copy of Guildmasters for a pledge of $50. The Bird Told Me to Do It is the latest card game from multi-use card master Carl Chuddick. Players will be adding cards to a communal tree. Each card has birds and an action on it, and you simply follow the action on the card. But that action is impacted by how the tree has formed, and not only do you take the action on your card, but you'll take the action on every other card along the branch you played it to as well. There are 48 unique cards in the game, so the combination options are practically endless. Ultimately, you want to collect these plumage cards, but be careful on how you do that because how the birds are aligned on a tree will impact the type of bird that scores. In typical Chuddick fashion, there's a lot going on in this small card game. A single deck will play 2 to 3 players, but with a second set you can play up to 5. You can get a single deck of The Birds Told Me to Do It for £13 plus shipping, or 2 copies for £19 plus shipping. In Cobras, players are villagers trying to make the best of a town being overrun by cobras. This is a trick-taking game in which thematically you're breeding cobras to turn them in for a bounty. You lose tricks to collect cobras and then win a trick at just the right moment to turn them in for points. Each card has 1 to 3 cobras on it, and the losers of a trick divide that number of snake tokens evenly among them, and the winner turns in their already held tokens in for points. The magic number is 7 cobras for a max of 21 points before the scoring actually turns downward. When 10 triple cobra cards have been played, the round ends, and any snakes left in your basket are worth -1 point. Each player also has a King Cobra card that lets you declare if you want to share in a win or loss during the round. Cobras follows a traditional trick-taking rhythm, but offers some nice and simple twists. You can get a copy for $16 plus shipping. 100 Swords from Laboratory Games is back with Season 2 that has 2 brand new decks. This is a dungeon crawl deck building card game that has 2 players delving into a dungeon, kicking open doors, and battling monsters. Cards have a movement and gold value, and you can choose how you use them as you fight the monsters or acquire more equipment to boost your deck. You'll delve deeper into the dungeon until you hit the boss, and after it's defeated, the player with the most gold wins. There are special cards that you can rent to help you along the way, and 100 Swords also has a solo play variant. Season 2 adds the Silver Queen or Gold King dungeons to explore, along with a new optional multiplayer pack expansion. 100 Swords is quick and engaging with fun art, and in keeping with the game's name, a bunch of swords. You can get a single deck of your choice for $14 plus shipping, but to get the whole Season 2 package, you'll need to pledge $36 plus shipping. And last but not least, the next game in the Tiny Epic series is on Kickstarter. In Tiny Epic Quest, you're controlling a team of 3 elven heroes adventuring across an expansive map. During the day phase, players use limited action movement cards to travel to different locations on the map to take advantage of the abilities of that spot or to complete quests. Quests are a puzzly element to the game because you complete them by arranging your heroes on the board according to the layout of the quest card. But again, you're only moving using those limited cards, so this can be tricky. During the night phase, you'll be rolling dice in a kind of semi-communal push-your-luck game, trying to accomplish tasks of where you ended the day phase, like fighting goblins, or journeying through the temple to try to obtain legendary items. Speaking of which, like all Tiny Epic games, Tiny Epic Quest comes full of components like map and quest cards, custom dice, and more. But Tiny Epic Quest is all about these snazzy new item meeples that allow you to physically attach the items you earn to the meeple itself. It looks super cool and the toy factor is high. The base game of Tiny Epic Quest is just $20 plus shipping, but for just $4 more, you can get the deluxe edition, which includes the Golden Mushrooms expansion. Okay, that's all I've got for you this episode. Hopefully something caught your eye. And until next time, I hope you have a wonderful week.
Hey folks, I'm Tom Vessel.
Jason Levine.
And today's question is, how much is the app worth to the price of a game? So what they mean by this is a lot of fantasy flight games and other games are coming with apps included. And so you buy the game and you get this app, and the game doesn't have as much stuff in it, but the price is still high because they're including the cost of that app. Is that fair? Especially since the app costs a certain amount to make, and then they don't have to keep producing the app, although they do keep having to produce components.
I think that, well, I look at a game, and we had this discussion about value of a game, and I think that value of a game is also part of the value is what the designer puts in and the mechanics and the thought behind the game and the actual working of the game is part of the value of what you're paying for a game. And I think the app is very valuable. And the app, not only are they putting in thought, but they're actually putting in programming time and having to get programmers to program it as well. So I think it's very valuable. I mean, when you look at a game like World of Yoho, in this, you're sliding it around and it's your piece and everything. You're moving the actual piece on the board, your phone. That took a lot of work, and that deserves to be part of the price of the game.
Yeah, I'm really kind of mind-boggled sometimes how people don't know how much money and work goes into an app. They're not cheap. They're very expensive. So yes, of course, they should add to the cost of the game. The problem is people have it in their minds that apps are worth $1 or $2 because that's what most of them sell for. And that whole price point is low. But when you add them to a game, and especially if they're going to keep tweaking it and making updates on it and stuff, I certainly think that should be included in the price of a game. The new Mansions of Madness should definitely include the
Yes.
price of that app. The World of Yoho essentially comes with a board.
Yes.
The app is the most of the game, and I think that it's worth that in the price. XCOM, without the app, not that great of a game. Alchemist, without the app, you can play it, but it's not nearly as good.
It's not nearly as good because the deduction would take hours with the little, you could do a deduction on your own, no. But same thing like First Martians. I mean, Robinson Crusoe is a great game, but First Martians is going to have such a more expansive universe because you could put so much more into an app, and you'll have never-ending stories in First Martians with it.
Yeah, I'm really, really excited to see the future of apps mixed with games, so I think they're worth paying for.
Yes.
Until next time, I'm Tom Vassell.
Jason Levine.
Tell us what you think in the comments.
Hi, welcome to the one-on-one. This week we're going to be talking about cleaning brushes. Now here I have a bunch of brushes that are not very cleaned properly, and people always ask me, well, how do I get them really, really clean? Well, I go down to Hobby Lobby a lot of times and I get this brush cleaner and conditioner. This is great stuff. Now on its own in a cup it would be perfect, but the best thing to do is to get one of these brush tanks. As you can see, it has a nice kind of metal thing in here, and it's perfect for cleaning those brushes that have a lot of gunk in it. But by just taking this and just rubbing it up against these grates, it does take out that paint that gets stuck right in the bristles there, that make your bristles go like this, and you're able to loosen up that dry paint and bring your brushes back to where you want to get them. And it's a conditioner, so it's going to keep them nice and soft so they don't get all hard and gooky like I let them get sometimes, especially my cheapo brushes that I really like. But just using this and also using some water and just scrubbing them out against that grate, it does wonders. And you can see that actually some of the paint is actually coming off, so we get a nice bright brush just like it used to be, and it's nice and soft too because it has that conditioner. I usually like to dry them off and then put them aside and make sure that they are in great shape. So that's how I take care of my brushes. You can use water, but I really suggest that you get yourself some brush cleaner and conditioner. You can get it at any art store or any craft store, and it'll help keep your brushes nice. Until next time, I'm Rob Warren, and we'll see you soon.
All right, folks, so what are we doing this week at the Dice Tower? Well, we have several reviews for you. Sam and I are going to be taking a look at the new Big Giant Conan board game. Also be taking a look at Hellas, the new expansion for Orleans, Mi Tierra, the Camel Up, whatever, card game. So that stuff's coming out today. As I mentioned on the Dice Tower audio, which is dropped on our show on our channel tomorrow, you want to check out, there's a contest there. So we're certainly looking to hear feedback on that. And there's quite a few other games that we're going to be taking a look at this week. There's a top 10 list coming from the Dice Tower this week. I believe, which top 10 list is it? I don't know. It's one of our top 10 lists. We recorded a couple to get ahead. And so there's other stuff that's being planned and getting ready. There's a Throat Punch launch coming out this week. So lots of cool things coming from the Dice Tower your way. Of course, you can find all this stuff at dicetower.com.
Chaz Marler from Pair of Dice Paradise here, and if it's one thing that I know that people like, it's stuff. I mean, people's stuff is just all over the place. And the only thing that people like more than stuff is free stuff. Which is one of the reasons why, since 2002, crowds of consumers have flocked to their favorite comic book shops on the first Saturday in May each year for Free Comic Book Day, where participating comic book retailers give away specially printed copies of comic books at no charge. It's like Christmas, except that it's in May instead of December, and instead of Santa Claus running the show, you have his older counterpart, Stanley. Well, anything successful is bound to eventually spawn sequels, and Free Comic Book Day is no exception, which is just one of the reasons why we're just days away from a similar event, Local Comic Shop Day, where the comics aren't free, but participating retailers do receive exclusive toys and comics to sell, such as this exclusive one-shot issue of The Tick,
Sweet!
or the perhaps even more fantastic, long-awaited, and highly anticipated Archie Meets the Ramones. So while Local Comic Shop Day is great news for lovers of both comics and the seminal punk rock sound, what does it have to do with board games? Well, the company USAopoly, publishers of the recently very well-received game Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle, and enough variations of Monopoly to fill a rock and roll high school, will be participating in the next Local Comic Shop Day, scheduled to take place on Saturday, November 19th. For the event, USAopoly will be releasing a kit to retailers which features some very exclusive promos, including a Vulcan Mind Meld promo card for Star Trek Panic, a Sunshine Daisy promo card for the Harry Potter Hogwarts Battle game, and several promos for Marvel Munchkin. Oh, and sure, even though when compared to the guitar-shredding adventures of the gang from Riverdale, the promise of getting mere board game promos may make you want to be sedated, this is still exciting news for gamers. It's one more instance in a growing list of examples of board games crossing over into other areas of geek culture and the media, which can't be anything but good for the health of the industry. So, here's what I want to know. Will you be taking advantage of Local Comic Shop Day to procure some board gaming promos for yourself? And if so, let me know what you found and what you ended up getting. I'd love to know in the comments below.
Hi everyone, and welcome to another segment of Board Gaming with Colleagues with To Die For Games. I'm Mandy, the board gaming pinup girl.
I'm Tracy, the gaming maven.
And I'm Steph, the games teacher. I'm craving me some nigiri. We should go for sushi because it's
Lunchtime! So today we are taking a look at Sushi Go Party. The game was created by Phil Walker Harding, published by Game Right Games, plays in about 20 minutes for 2 to 8 players.
The objective of the game is to be the one to make the sushi that gives you the most points over 3 rounds.
in Sushi Go Party, a number of different varieties of sushi and desserts will be available for you to pick from in order to make your ultimate sushi meal.
Sounds delicious. I actually have the original Sushi Go, and I almost kind of want to switch out for this one because it has the board and some other really fun treats. What do you guys think?
Well, the biggest thing I like about this is the fact there are 8 or 10 different ways you can pull the different cards. So some are more competitive, some are more point related, some are more family friendly. And that is what makes me prefer this one over the original.
Right.
I agree completely. It's more flexible, gives you more gameplay opportunities. I really enjoy Party.
Yeah. So party, exactly. Fun times. I think we're gonna stick with mine for now. We'll just borrow their copy during lunch break. So better get to it. We'll see you next time. Bye.
There's a lot of rhetoric on the internet these days. And don't worry, I'm not getting political at all here. I just want to talk a little bit, though, about being politically correct. That's a term that's thrown around a lot, both negatively and positively. Usually it's a negative thing, right? Where you look at someone and say, you're being politically correct. And I grew up in a setting where anything that was politically correct was like mocked and scorned. Come on now. And there certainly is no doubt that it can be taken to an extreme. And anything can be taken to an extreme. And I read an article this week where somebody was ranting and raving, essentially, against a company because that company had had a game with artwork with some revealing clothing on the women, and they had decided to add more clothing, essentially. And this person was angry because they said that this company had caved into pressure from a few people. I don't know anything about the situation in mind. I don't know about that particular artwork or what have you, but it did get me thinking. Earlier this year, I talked about how the hobby is not as inclusive as I like it to be, and what can companies do, what can I, Tom Vassell, do to make the hobby more inclusive? And there's a lot of different ways. And when it comes to the portrayal of women in games, it's been traditionally not. There's just they run into battle in chainmail bikinis. They're there essentially as sex objects to behold upon and look at, and people will argue and fuss and say, well, it's there. I'm appreciating the natural form of the female body, and what's wrong with this? Blah blah blah. But that's the way it's always been, as far as I remember, in gaming in general, whether it be video gaming or board gaming. And I don't know that that's a healthy thing for the hobby. Now, I'm not trying to get up on any high morality horse here, right? What I think about these pictures and morally is not what I'm talking about at all here. I'm talking about making the hobby a safe, friendly, inviting area for women. Now, whenever we talk about these things, tensions get very high and people get very heated over this. And, even though that's not my intention, I'm sure that may happen in the comments below. But what I am trying to say here is I live in a house of 9 people. 7 of them are females. It really behooves me to make the hobby a very friendly, welcoming place for females. And I've met some females who say that they have no problem with the objectification, pictorial references of women in games. That's fine. But I've met many more who are not necessarily gamers, who think that sort of thing is ridiculous, who really don't like it. Now, we as gamers, as publishers, as people who buy these games, we have the opportunity to make our voices heard. I'm not saying that every person in the game needs to be covered up in a fur blanket and such. I'm not advocating that. I'm just advocating a little bit of equality here. And it's not just, what they wear or anything. It's how they're portrayed. How many games are there where there's one massively cool male character, then there's another cool, funny sidekick male character, and a third male wizard character, then there's a female? 1 in 4. Why? Why is that? Why can't it be spread across? Why can't the main character be a female? Why can't that kind of come through? A lot of this came to mind. I was playing Conan, which is definitely not a game that follows what I just said. This is a game where the man is man and the women are kind of there as to be objectified. And I love the game. The game is an amazingly fun game. But I was kind of disappointed with the artwork, and my daughter did not even want to play it with me because of the art involved. Okay? So I don't care what all people say this, well, I know someone who did this, and I know someone who did this, and these women don't seem to care. Well, you know what? My daughter did care. And I think that's what we're kind of missing the point here. I know somebody who cared. My wife cares. Those are 2 people. And frankly, they're more important to me than any of those people that you mentioned. But it's not just them, there are other people. And every time they say, I don't really like this makes me feel uncomfortable, it seems like there's a chorus of people saying, well, you shouldn't be uncomfortable, that's not that big of a deal. Hey, they said it was a big deal. Now, granted, we can't change everything. And I don't think you should change. You want to do whatever you want at your house and play games and do whatever you want, that's fine. But it really kind of saddens me to see that while this streak is changing, I definitely see some companies who should be called out, and say, hey, look, these companies made it. They have equal representation in their games. Their characters don't look like they stepped out of a teenager's fantasy dream sequence. They look normal. And it's that sort of thing, diversification, and I'm not even talking just men and female, but diversification in many different ways. And that makes the hobby a welcoming place. Just when someone comes to our game meetup, I want them to be able to look at the games I'm playing and go, oh, okay, that looks interesting and fun, and not look at it and go, so the stereotypes of gamers are true. That's problematic to me. And here's the deal. If you say, wow, it's not that big of a deal. If it's not that big of a deal, then back off. Then what do you care if it's not that big of a deal? Or the even more ridiculous thing, we're like, well, the guys are, there's a guy with a chest and he's walking around like this, and I don't see anyone complaining about that. Yeah, because you like that too, right? That geeky fantasy is, that's the girl I want to have, and that's the guy I want to be. They're both there to appeal to the teenage geeky guy or non-geeky guy or whatever guy, and I can understand that. I'm a human being, but I don't want to play games with just geeky guys. I want to play games with lots of people. And we definitely haven't seen an explosion of growth in our hobby of females. And many times over social media or other places, I've seen them say, hey, the artwork in this game or some of the theming in this game makes me uncomfortable. And right away it's like, oh, politically correct, social justice warrior, not. And maybe it is. Maybe that is their agenda. I can't speak for these people, but at the same time, we need to listen to them. Because as a guy, the hobby's been kind of mine for a while. Last time I said some things along those lines, people were like, no, the hobby's always been 50-50, whatever. I've been to the conventions. Don't tell me otherwise. The hobby has been male-dominated. And yes, that's very fortunate for me. But I want to see this change. I want to see the companies change. I want to see an equal representation. You say it doesn't need to be equal representation. Yes, it does. All right? Because board gaming is not a guy's hobby. It's a hobby for everyone. When I first got into the hobby, my tagline for me was real men play board games. And I did that as kind of, real men do this, real men do this, real men play board games. But I've since got rid of that tagline. I since got rid of all that because it's real people play board games. That's really what I want to talk about. I want to talk about people who play board games. And in that regard, I've been trying to get more female contributors on the Dice Tower. And if you are one, please come on and just try to have as much diversification on Dice Tower as we can, because we want people to look at us and say, oh, wow, that's just normal people like you and me. That's the people I want to be involved with. Now, have we been perfect on it? No. Is every game that I have in my collection? No, it's not. But I'd like to get to that point. And if nothing else, I like to have the dialogue. I like to listen to what people say. You don't like this in a game? Really? Well, tell me more about that. What don't you like about that in a game? And then publishers, let's listen to what people say. You say, the vocal few. Guess what, buddy who says that? We ain't the vocal few. There's a lot of us.
Hey there, this is Mike with the Board Game Makeover. For the last 6 weeks, I have had the privilege of working on a farm. That's right, it's an agritainment farm, a farm for families to come out and go through the corn mazes and go on hay rides, and in honor of Bob's Corn and Pumpkin Farm, I took Bonanza and made it Bobnanza. And I changed out all the beans with corn. Let me show you my experience on the farm and how I changed this game. During my 6 weeks at working at Bob's Corn, I got to do all kinds of tasks, including picking pumpkins, picking corn, picking squash, picking gourds, whatever those are. I got to see hot air balloons land and take off from their farm. During the weekends, I worked down in the pits, which is where the fire pits are. The corn maze is probably their biggest draw, and Bob's goal every year is to make it as complicated as possible. This year, our October was the wettest October in history, and 25 days out of 31 saw rain and soon lots of flooding in the valley. But that didn't keep the people away, as the floods eventually receded and people continued to come and buy their pumpkins and just have a great family time at Bob's Corn and Pumpkin Farm. I replaced all of the beans in Bonanza with Bobnanza corn. I have the wax corn, the blue corn, the chili corn, the stink corn, the green corn, the soy corn, the black-eyed corn, the red corn, the garden corn, and the cocoa corn. The game plays the exact same, except instead of beans, you're growing corn. So working on a farm for 6 weeks was a great experience. But working 40 hours at one job and then working another 30 hours that same week at that farm job really wore me out. But I'm glad it's over, I'm glad I did it, and I'm glad I turned Bonanza into Bobnanza. Thanks for watching the Board Game Makeover. We'll see you next time.
Hi guys. If you're ever in the opportunity to visit the Netherlands, I highly recommend you do so. Not just because of the people or the vla or the poffertjes or any other substance you might have heard so much about, but because of the nature. This week the results came in of a nationwide vote as to which piece of nature the Dutch find the best. And according to the people, you should really visit the Waddengebied. It is an intertidal zone in the north of the Netherlands and most famous for its rich flora and fauna. And really is beautiful. This week I am playing a game where each player is building his own world and every animal counts. Time is of the essence. For this week I am playing Mondo. In Mondo, each player creates a perfect world using tiles that are at everyone's disposal. At the beginning of each round, random scoring tiles will be drawn to set a goal for the current round, and then the timer starts. Using only one hand, players try to find the next tile they can add to their world. Each tile should be placed adjacent to a previously played tile, and it's okay if the areas don't match up, although you receive minus points at the end of the round. And once you place a tile, you cannot go back and change its position. Every animal is 1 point, every active volcano will lose you 1 point, as well as any errors you might have built in. Every error-free area scores you 2 points. At the end of 3 rounds, you add up the points and see who wins. I like Mondo, but then again I have never lost a game of Mondo. It's hard to not compare it to Galaxy Trucker, which I like a bit better because it's a bit more complex. But if you're a casual gamer or playing with a family, I think you should really give this one a try. Mondo. My name is Dave Luza. Thanks for watching.
And we're back. Hi, I'm your Whitlepedia, the free board game encyclopedia. Now, a lot of people have been asking me, since I'm such a big D&D fan, I say it's my #1 game, I maybe talk about it a little too much on the show. They asked me, what do I think of Tyrants of the Underdark? My reaction is threefold. Firstly, the question is, how well does it work as an area control game? In that aspect, it's okay. Not great, but just okay. I like that there's sort of the generic faction that you have to fight against while also fighting against each other. I think that provides a good buffer in the beginning and then an opportunity for victory points at the end. That works pretty well. Secondly is, how does it work as a deck builder? Well, as you know, any deck builder is going to be compared to a certain game. The functions that you have with the different cards is different enough from what we saw in Dominion and other Dominion clones that it feels like its own game, and I like it. Now, the third point is the theme. How does it capture the D&D theme? That, I think it works extremely well. The different cards capture the idea of what different types of characters from the Underdark are going to be like. The one shortcoming is that you don't have individual player powers for your different drow noble families. Kind of like in King of Tokyo, how you didn't have powers at the beginning, but I suspect there'll be an expansion that amends that. I really like the idea of promoting cards. Thematically as well as mechanically, that works well because what you have is the card has some utility, and you have to decide at one point when is it worth more points than whatever benefit I'm getting from it. So I really like that. I only played it a little bit. Looking forward to playing it more. Is this a worthy successor to Lords of Waterdeep? I don't know, but I'm looking forward to finding out.
All right, it's time to take a look at some more shelves in my collection and tell you why I'm keeping the games I am. We'll start here. Revolution. Revolution is a fantastic game. This is almost like a gateway game for me, where you're trying to basically outguess the other person. It's like a really advanced form of rock, paper, scissors, except that it's gold, black, mail, and force, and it's not really rock, paper, scissors. It's very unique. Quadropolis, this is a great tile-laying game. I love the theme of it, but I like the actual playing of the tiles even more. The mechanisms here, gorgeous production from Days of Wonder. Lost Valley. I still really enjoy this game about going and panning for gold. You get one quick action, so boom, 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 boom. You take these actions, go around, hunt animals, explore, discover. Really good sense of exploration. Project Elite, if you should know by now, this is easily one of my favorite games. I just love this cooperative speed game with aliens just pouring at you. Conquest of the Planet Earth Apocalypse. I don't talk about this. Actually, this is just Conquest of the Planet Earth. I'm keeping it in the expansion box, but I don't talk about this game a lot, and it really should get more buzz. I'm not a huge fan of Flying Frog Productions, but this is one game I keep because I really like the co-op nature of this game. As you go in and you're trying to conquer Earth, it can be played competitively, but that's garbage. Don't do it that way. Just a really neat game, and also all my stuff in it's painted, which is neat. Chaos Ball. Now this one's intriguing to me because this one's not only here, I have another whole shelf of it, of the teams and stuff, and I really like Chaos Ball. It's a really fun fight 'em up, smack the other person around. I don't know how much longer I'm going to keep it. In fact, both of these two games are on the edge, right? They're both great games, but I mean, I have to keep games on my shelf that I play all the time. Chaos Ball, I don't play as much as I should. Maybe if I paid it to miniatures, I'd play it more. So I don't know, but it's a really fun game from Eric Lang. Forbidden Stars is the Warhammer 40K one, and this one also painted. This one is painted for me. I really like it. The thing was, I was kind of expecting some expansions for it. You know, I wanted to see the Tau and the Necrons and more units for each of these. And we're not going to get that now because Games Workshop and Fantasy Flight split. That doesn't make this game worse. It really is a great game. But at the same time, a lot of the feelings I got from this game, I'm also getting from Star Wars Rebellion. So these are two great games, but if any of these games left, I think these two might be first. But right now, I don't have to get rid of any of them, so who cares?
Hi, my name's Dave Adams. Welcome to Good Game, Better Gamers. Now, last week I promised that I would start talking about the nature of Big C creativity. Now, before I get into talking about my list of people who I think are Big C creatives in the board game industry, I want to talk briefly about the nature of peaking creatively. Mihai Chick Sent Me High takes note of the fact that in different fields, people peak at different times creatively. That doesn't mean they stop being creative. It doesn't mean they stop making a significant contribution. But generally, the most notable contribution happens at a specific time. It's probably worth noting that when peaking happens in the board game industry, a lot of the big names had huge contributions when they were younger and have continued to build on their creativity and make creative contributions, but their most significant contribution seems to perhaps be a little bit earlier. So we might note such people as Gary Gygax, Antoine Bowser, or even Richard Garfield, and note that they were quite young in their field when they made their greatest contribution, but that their contribution has been an ongoing and continual development, and they're still making a great contribution, all except Gary Gygax. The reason it's important to bring that up is to also note that these contributions have still occurred after a significant pressure boiler period of learning. In fact, Malcolm Gladwell talks about the 10,000 hours, or which equates sometimes to about 10 years of expertise. There seems to be a correlation between building expertise or getting to this 10,000 hour mark and making significant breakthroughs into their industry. So why that's important is to note that while these people may seem to have been quite young when they made their most significant contribution, it came after a significant period of deliberate learning and deliberate practice and built towards this breakthrough moment for them. Because one of the challenges of talking about creativity is we often talk about the product after the fact and look at the achievements and what was done, and we fail to see necessarily all the hard laborious, tedious work that went into making that contribution possible. So next week we're going to start with the first of our Big C creatives, and I look forward to sharing that with you. Until then, my name's Dave Adams. Enjoy your breakfast.
Hey folks, today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. We're going to be taking a look at a book. This book is Ticket to Carcassonne, 21st Century Tabletop Games, and it's written by Steve D. And in this, he talks about how he found the world of designer games, and then he takes a look at several games. He takes a look at Carcassonne, Ticket to Ride, Pandemic, Stone Age, Dominion. And in each of these chapters, he gives an introduction to the game, gives some anecdotes about the game, gives some strategy that's found in the game. Now, I should mention, before going farther, that he talks about other things, and he does recommend that people listen to the Dice Tower and says some nice things about us. There's other, he talks about a lot of different people here in the book, but he does mention us, so that's very nice. Is this worth getting for you? First of all, there's some anecdotes and some interesting stories in here that he talks about the different games, and I always find it fascinating to read about how someone got into gaming. If you've never played things before, this might be, there's parts of it that I think are worthwhile to give somebody who has not played games before, because these are great games to talk about, especially for someone new into the hobby. The strategy for them, now I'm not someone who reads strategy articles ever, but the strategy I found in these seems somewhat obvious to me, or at least it's not like, oh, wow, I never thought of that. Maybe if you are new to these games, this book will help out in that regard. So in each chapter, as I go through, first he talks about the game, like for example, Carcassonne. Then he gives an analysis and gives overall strategy, like this is what you should do with roads, and this is how you work with monasteries, and this is the different tactics, and here's how you work in the end game. And then he goes over each of the different expansions and talks a little bit about those. And then in each chapter, and this I thought was kind of a weird thing in the book, he would say, well, I love this game, but here's some other people's ideas. And he'll quote people. And I can't tell if these are made up quotes that he put in there to be funny, or if they're real quotes, because the quotes are, like, for example, I love board games like Monopoly, but this is nothing like Monopoly. Very disappointed. Did someone say that? Because if they said it, I guess that's supposed to be funny. If they weren't being funny, it's not useful. And so those chapters, I think I would skip. The writing for this is okay. I'm not a great writer myself, right? I write, it's like on the same level I think that I would write. And there's that constant, hey, this is funny, hey, funny. And there's also a lot of humor in here, I think, that if you weren't like a big board game fan, you might not get. And so he does and talks to the designers of these games and says, what do you think? Tries to get some anecdotes out of them and such. So am I recommending this book? Well, it's not a very expensive book. So if you want to read more about these games and maybe you want to learn strategy, or just, have a book on your Kindle that's about board games, I think you'll like it. I'd give this a 6 out of 10. It was not spectacular. I think there was a lot of forced humor in it, but it is laid out nice and neatly. If someone is brand new to the hobby, I think it would be a useful book for them to go and say, oh, here's some games. Oh, let me learn about Stone Age. Let me learn about Dominion. And then I also like how he has all the different expansions for these lined up, and you can say, should I get these or not? And at the end, he talks about tips for starting your own game group. So that's some beneficial things at the end there. And like I said, he points people to Dice Tower. So hey, but it's good. I wouldn't mind to see maybe double the length and maybe some more in-depth analysis, even though that's not interesting to me. I think some more people might have found that fascinating, or maybe to find things that we don't know. This feels like a very surface level book. But anyway, that is Ticket to Carcassonne, 21st Century Tabletop Games.
So a few weeks ago, I was talking about how I don't really care about theme. But turns out I'm a terrible, dirty, horrible, awful, horrible, terrible, dirty, awful, lovable, horrible liar. So I was looking through my collection, and it turns out if you stick like an ancient Chinese or an ancient Japanese theme on a game, I'm way more likely to want it. I think it might have something to do with Final Fantasy VII, which was my whole world when I was 12. Now, Eastern games do sometimes have a problem with them. Just Google Orientalism. But seriously, stick a pagoda on the box and shut up and take my money. Take Tokaido, for instance, where you're taking a lovely journey across Japan. If you were taking a magical mystery tour across a trading estate in Cardiff, I'd probably have given it a miss. What it is that I don't care about so much is thematic integration in the game. I mean, look at the Gates of Liang. Tiny radishes, where a new field magically emerges every day, and if you plant a crop that night, in the morning, they're all there, the whole field is completely full, like that episode of The Simpsons with the tomato plants. Remember that? Those guys. I totally agree that sometimes when the mechanics and the theme match up perfectly, it makes for a magical experience, but sometimes I just want to play Trajan. Alright? So what do you guys think is more important? Theme or the thematic integration of that theme? And have you ever walked past your board game collection and realised that you love a theme that you never even knew you loved? Like Sasquatch? Let me know.
Woo! Well, that is a lot of stuff. Hey, folks, I'm doing a Q&A today, a live Q&A. I don't know exactly what time yet, so you have to check the channel and see when that Q&A is scheduled. Probably earlier rather than later today. And so keep an eye out for different videos that are coming from the Dice Tower this week. Remember what I said about listening to the audio show tomorrow and all kinds of things, the Dice Tower convention, lots of cool things. Anyhow, folks, we appreciate you watching Board Game Breakfast. Until next time, I'm Tom Vassell, and this has been the Dice Tower.
Thanks for watching Board Game Breakfast. Tune in each week for your daily dose of gaming goodness with Tom Vassell and all the gang. Until next time, I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching Board Game Breakfast, a Dice Tower production, sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., an amazing place to buy board games. Cool stuff in stock at CoolStuffInc.com.